In this lecture, we're going to think about teaching Chinese communicatively. In the past, in fact, in the very distant past, because few people traveled abroad, many people just simply enjoyed studying languages. And so the main method of teaching languages at that time was called the grammar translation method. Simply, students had, say, English and French, and they translated these passages of English into French and passages of French into English, and then the teacher told them the grammar rules, which then they had to memorize. And so classwork was highly structured. The teacher controlled all the activities. Then in the 1940s, as linguists recognized that people wanted not just to study languages and analyze them, but actually they wanted to talk the language, and as linguists began to realize that becoming fluent in a language was the acquisition of a set of language habits, the so-called audiolingual method became very popular. This involved the learner repeating over and over again various sentences, particularly certain grammar patterns, until they were able to say these automatically, say them spontaneously. The problem was that although the students were able to say these sentences in class, which of course were grammatically correct, they could say them very spontaneously. The problem is that often to the student these sentences were meaningless, like the cat sat on the mat. So for instance, if the teacher was trying to teach time words, they would give them the sentence 我要到昆明去, and then they would give them the hint 明天, and the student had to put 明天 in the right place in the sentence. 我明天要到昆明去. And so you had these drills, a lot of drilling. 我要到昆明去. The teacher says 明天, and the student says 我明天要到昆明去. And then the teacher says again 我要到昆明去. The teacher says 下个星期, and the student says 我下个星期要到昆明去. And then the teacher says again 我要到昆明去明年, and the student has to say 我明年要到昆明去. The problem was that although the student could say it accurately, grammatically accurately, could say it very fluently, maybe the student never wanted to go to Kunming in the first place. And so gradually what is called the communicative approach to language teaching came in. Recognizing that most people today want to learn languages for using it, often because they want to go to that country, to travel in that country, or even to live in that country. They don't just want to study the language, they want to actually use it. The communicative approach has become very popular, and it focuses on real-life communication of the target language right from the start. And so there's two things that are key to the communicative approach to language teaching. Firstly, the topics chosen are those topics that are relevant to the student's life, say, in China. For instance, if a foreigner moves to China, what are some of the things they need to do right from the beginning? Well, they obviously need to buy things. They need to order food in a restaurant. They need to introduce themselves. They also need to give directions, say, to a taxi driver, or to ask for directions. How do I get from A to B? And so these topics, what writers of textbooks did was they said, now what are the topics that are relevant to the student? And that was the order in which they appeared in the textbook, according to the communicative needs of the student. But tied in with this, therefore, was that the topic became as important as the grammar. In fact, the grammar becomes subservient to the topic rather than the other way around. You see, in older textbooks, the teacher would think, now this lesson I want to teach this grammar point, say time words or prepositions, and would then write a dialogue that would use that part of speech, prepositions or time words, so the student could see that grammar point being used in a dialogue. But now what happens is that the teacher takes a topic and then asks themselves, what grammar points are relevant to this topic? In other words, to be able to talk about this topic, what grammar will I need to use? And so grammar is taught communicatively, in other words, according to use, not just form. So let's think about this. What does it mean to teach grammar communicatively? Well, communicative grammar can be defined as using appropriate grammar patterns for meaningful communication. Grammar patterns should therefore be introduced as to how they can be used in real-life communication, not just linguistic forms. In other words, you have to tell the student not just the grammar pattern, but when Chinese use it in communication. So let's think about teaching a new grammar point, and I'll write on the board here. You see, the old approach when introducing teaching a new grammar pattern was firstly form, subject, verb, object, then meaning, giving a sentence, and then finally use, when it's used. But with the communicative approach, it became the other way around. It became use, how, when do we use this, then meaning, we'll look at an example in a minute, and then finally, the form. For instance, let's take comparing. That's the use. Comparing heights, comparing ages, comparing prices, comparing weights, comparing size. We want to help the student to know how to compare things in Chinese. Then the meaning, we take a sentence, 我比你高. Let me use another pen. 我比你高. What does that mean? It means I am taller than you. 我比你高. So it's comparing heights. I am taller than you. That's the meaning. Now, what's the form? The form is A, B, B, adjective. So you can see the difference. With the communicative approach to teaching, firstly, you tell the student when it's used, when we want to compare things, heights, ages, sizes, weights. And then we give an example to show the meaning, 我比你高. We're comparing heights of two people. And then the form, A, B, B, adjective, it gives them the form. Now, when we move on to therefore wanting to practice this, we go firstly from control practice, control practice, which is looking at the form. For instance, time words. We've already said time words. For instance, 我要到菜市场去. And then you tell the student 明天. He says, 我明天要到菜市场去. And then you say 下个星期三. And he says, 我下个星期三要到菜市场去. That's control practice. Then you move on to less control practice. Here, for instance, one could use a calendar. And the student, you ask the student, 你什么时候要到北京去? And you point here, and the student says, 我1月8号要到北京去. And then you ask them, 你什么时候要到上海去? And you point to here, and he says, 我1月30号要到上海去. That's getting closer to real life. And then finally, what's called creative, much closer to real life. Here, the student and the teacher act it out. For instance, the student wants to buy an air ticket, so the teacher is the travel agent, and the student has to call up and order an air ticket for a particular date, a particular time. Or for instance, the student wants to buy a train ticket, so the teacher is the person at the train station selling the tickets, and the student has to call them up and buy, or go there and buy a train ticket at that time. So you can see with communicative teaching, it's use, what is it? Comparing different things. Then meaning, 我比你高 means one person is taller than another, and this is the form that we have to remember, which then we practice from controlled down to less control, and then creative. Finally, just to help you hopefully see the difference a bit more, what I'm going to do is take some examples from textbooks written in China. Some that focus on communicative teaching of grammar, others that focus on the form more than a communicative use. I'm going to give you 4 examples. Firstly, this sentence, 他跑得很快, 他跑得很快. The communicative way of teaching this is saying 跑得很快 indicates how actions are done. That's the use, how actions are done. The meaning, 他跑得很快, he runs very fast. And the form, 跑得很快, verb, the adjective. Okay? That's the communicative way of teaching that 他跑得很快. But in a textbook that I saw recently, which is focusing on the form rather than communication, it says this when introducing 跑得很快. It says words after verbs or adjectives to indicate the extent of the quality or the state of an action are called complements of degree. Complements of degree are usually made of adjectives or a complex structure, and the structural particle de is used to connect the verb or the adjective and its complement of degree. You see, the problem with that is the textbook is just giving the form, but the student doesn't know when it's used. I'll give you another example. This one, 我的钱被他偷走了. 我的钱被他偷走了. The communicative way of teaching this is say, this is the passive. The meaning is 我的钱被他偷走了. My money was stolen by him. And the form is receiver, 被, doer, verb. Where a textbook in China explains the passive like this. The word 被 can make up a pattern, noun 1, 被, noun 2, plus verb, plus other elements. In a 被 sentence, noun 1 must be the object of the following verb. Also, in 被 sentences, the verb doesn't stand alone as the predicate, but usually has complement plus le. Again, the problem is that the student reads that but doesn't know when to use it. And finally, I'll read another one, yo, yo. Okay? When teach it communicatively, yo, yo is both and. Ta yo gao, yo pang is the meaning, and the form, yo adjective, yo adjective. Okay? Where one textbook in China states it like this. The construction yo, yo can be used to express different meanings. One of them is to express simultaneous existence of two or more kinds of things, people, action states, including the state of objects, as well as psychological states, which in turn includes perception, emotion, opinion, and idea, properties, skills, functions, effects, reasons, purposes, conditions, and results. And I'd like to suggest that when the student has read that explanation, they have no idea how to use yo-yo, because it's just simply describing the form, not how to use it. So it's key when we're teaching grammar or teaching Chinese that we teach it communicatively. Firstly, what are those topics most relevant, most urgent to the student? They should come early on in the textbook. Secondly, when we teach the grammar, we don't just teach the form, but we first tell them when is it used, what is it trying to do, for instance, comparing, then the meaning, 我比你高, one person is taller than another, and then finally the form, 比你 adjective. I hope you found that helpful.